Hi everyone, and welcome to Therapy Chats and Plant Chores. My name is Jess, I'm a therapist, and I am going to be potting up these cuttings that I have sitting in front of me. I actually got these golden pothos cuttings from my parents' front yard. They have a very old, mature, ginormous pothos vine that is growing all over their trees on the ground in with other vines, and so it was kind of crawling out into the driveway, and so I chopped up a bunch of it to make my own golden pothos. Now, as you can see, some of these leaves are ginormous. I mean, if you look at the size comparison of my hand versus the leaf, some of these leaves are huge. Some of these leaves are nice and small, maybe what you're used to seeing in a golden pothos. And I know that for this one, when I pot up these bigger leaves, it's most likely not going to push out leaves that are this exact size. They're probably going to be a little bit smaller because I'm just going to let these guys trail. I do have some separate cuttings with leaves that are even bigger that I do have attached to a moss pole, so I'm hoping that that one will shoot out some pretty big leaves. And yeah, so I'm excited. I have a terracotta pot and I have another little nursery pot here that I am going to be planting them into. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you are interested in things mental health and plants, you have landed in the right spot. If you like this video, please at the end go ahead and like it, share it with people, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more talks with me while I do my plant chores. And yeah, I'm super excited because today we're going to be talking about grounding. We're going to be talking all about what grounding means. We're going to be talking about grounding specifically within two big categories, and then how to implement it in your life and what it will eventually look like as you keep using this technique. So I'm really excited to share this all with you. Now, first off, when we think about grounding, what is grounding? What does that term even mean? So to take a pretty big concept and put it into like some smaller phrasing, grounding, how I would best describe it, is when you are aligned with your most authentic self. And what that basically means is that your most authentic self is going to be a self that is able to see things the way they are while using equal parts rational and emotional parts of your brain. So, for example, if you are in a scenario that feels very emotionally charged, if you are aligned with your most authentic self, you can bring in the rational to help you make better sense of whatever situation you're in. Vice versa, if you find yourself thinking very logically and just by the rules and really leaving your emotion out of the equation, you can ground yourself and align yourself with the emotional part of you as well, so that that part of you can chime in and allow you to make a decision that really honors all parts of you. The two categories I'm going to be breaking down this concept of grounding into. The first is going to be simple mindfulness. That, I'm sure, is a term you might have heard of, especially if you follow any therapist social media accounts. Mindfulness is something that has been big for a while. A lot of people are talking about it, and basically it's your ability to just stay present in the moment as your most authentic self, making sure that your emotions are getting the attention that they need, and your rational part of your brain is also getting the attention that it needs. And then the other category is trauma/PTSD symptoms. So if you are someone who has diagnosable PTSD, you're most likely experiencing one, if not all, of the following. There's other symptoms too, but I'm just going to focus on a few of them. You're either dissociating, or you are having intrusive thoughts. Any one of those things, those symptoms that you're experiencing, can be helped by the use of grounding techniques. I'm gonna go into a little bit more on the specifics later, but those are the two categories that I will be breaking them down into. Now, just for the record, you can have some of those symptoms without having the PTSD diagnosis. So you can still be practicing quote unquote mindfulness while having dissociation, while having flashbacks, any of those things. And just to quickly kind of give some terminology to these definitions, dissociation is essentially it's when you kind of escape to like a separate part of your mind and you're not present. So if you've ever seen someone space out, or if you've ever heard the term like zoned out, or if you have ever daydreamed in class as a student, you were dissociating. So we all do that to some degree. Even if you have never experienced any major traumas, we all have that capacity to just escape our present situation. Even if it's just simply to, you know, you're sitting in math class and the teacher is so boring and you're just not interested in math, you can just escape to another part of your brain where you start daydreaming. And even if it's something, most of the time it's always something positive when your mind is taking you elsewhere, because it's trying to maintain some positivity in your mind. And then intrusive thoughts are thoughts that you do not want to have, but just continuously enter into your mind without your consent necessarily. So most likely there's a trigger, or there's something that's happening that constantly brings these thoughts into your mind, even if you don't want them, even if you wish they would go away, and they still continue to enter into your mind. And then flashbacks are something that happens when you are triggered and your mind and body get almost transported back into the trauma. So it's almost, so for example, you can be triggered by something like a smell or a taste of something or anything along those lines and get a flashback, and you will feel like you're literally experiencing the trauma again in present day. You will have the similar body sensations. You might even dissociate during it and just visually like see what the trauma was like. So it can be really scary and really intense depending on the severity of the symptoms. And so grounding can really help be a preventative tool so that those symptoms will not be too intense for you, or they will happen less frequently for you. And that's when you have symptoms of PTSD. Now for mindfulness, like I mentioned, everyone dissociates. So you can definitely still dissociate. You can still daydream and check out and zone out and all of those things pretty frequently, again, without being diagnosed with PTSD. And so that's another place where mindfulness can be really helpful. And mindfulness can just keep you present and in the moment so you're not missing anything. And a perfect example of this would be math class. So maybe you're not really doing so well in the class, maybe math just really isn't your thing, and you really want to pay attention and focus, but gosh, the content is just not your thing. Grounding techniques can really help you stay focused and present in the moment so that when you are sitting in a lecture, whether you're in college or you're a high school student or you're in your master's, PhD, whatever, you can use grounding techniques to help stay focused, that you're not daydreaming and you're still absorbing the content, even if it's something that's super boring to you. So those are just a few ways in which mindfulness can occur. And yeah, it's just another way for you to use grounding without really needing to have experienced any major traumas. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, that sounds great. That sounds like something I would want, but then how do I even go about doing it? How would I even go about grounding myself? So the way to ground yourself is to activate one or all of your 5 senses. Your 5 senses are seeing, like what you see with your eyes, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. So those are all 5 of your senses, and your body uses all 5 of those senses to take in information. And that's even how your mind will register safety versus something that's not safe. For example, if you are cooking in the kitchen and you smell your food start to burn, that smell activates, because it's associated with burning food, with food that doesn't taste good, with food that's overcooked. Your mind is going to say, uh-oh, better go check your food. So then that will be your indicator to go run and check your food. If you're cooking on a stovetop and you feel the heat, that physical sensation, your body has registered that with pain, with something that's harmful for you. So your body will feel the heat and allow you to stay away from something that's hot. And that's even why if you are to grab something out of the oven, if you accidentally forget an oven mitt or something like that, you touch it and then you immediately release it, because the pain from the heat, that physical sensation will register in your body as something that's not safe for you, and so then it will release it And then unfortunately, I hope it wouldn't spill all over the place, but that is essentially why your body has 5 senses. It's a way for your mind and body to just take in information about the world. So when we're grounding, we want to use those 5 senses to our advantage. And this is where the 2 categories really come into play, because with trauma grounding, when you're trying to ground yourself because of trauma symptoms, you have to make sure that everything is super strategic. You have to pick what 5 senses you're going to activate, or the things that will activate those 5 senses. And you'll have to make sure that you pick them in advance and make sure that you go through a process of associating them with safety. And then with mindfulness, you can really just kind of take a look around wherever you're at and just ground yourself. So for mindfulness, I can feel the leaves, I can smell the soil, I can feel the texture, I'm not going to taste anything, but those are just some of the senses that are activated that allow me to be present and in the moment. Now, if I were going through trauma and I experienced a trauma related to plants for some reason, I would have to make sure that I chose something that would activate my 5 senses in a way that was not related to plants at all, because the plants themselves, their smell, their touch, whatever, can trigger me. And so I need something that's the opposite to help remind me that I am safe and present in this moment. Because that's also why PTSD is your mind trying to reconcile with the fact that you are currently safe and that trauma is not still happening to you. There's more complexity to that, but that is like that's a huge component of PTSD, is your body just not being able to register safety all the time. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start with grounding for trauma. If you have symptoms of PTSD, even if you are not officially diagnosed with PTSD. First off, actually, I do recommend you getting a grounding kit, or at least making a grounding kit for yourself. Now you might be thinking, what's a grounding kit? A grounding kit it can be something that's really big. I recommend it being something that's small so that you can take it with you anywhere, but basically it's a container, whether that be a pouch, a small little basket, or a little bag, anything like that, that has items in it that will activate one of your 5 senses. If you are someone who has very severe symptoms of PTSD that are completely overwhelming for you, I highly recommend making sure that you can activate all 5 of the senses at the same time. If you are someone who has, maybe the symptoms are still present and they can take you out of the present moment, but they're not intense enough to where you'll have a full-blown panic attack, or you are still able to kind of work and do things, then you can have just like a couple of your senses activated and it should still work and be okay. But anyways, with all of that, with your grounding kit, it will be on you to figure out what things can you associate with safety. So for example, if the smell of a person's cologne is something that's really triggering for you, you don't want to put anything that smells remotely like that cologne in your grounding kit. Maybe you want to put lavender essential oil because it's very relaxing and calming and soothing. Or maybe you would like to put in peppermint oil because it makes you feel alive and it makes you feel alert. Anything along those lines would be excellent in activating your sense of smell. So apply that way of thinking to all of your 5 senses, making sure you have like a picture of something that's not related to your trauma at all that can help you feel safe in this moment. And once you have that grounding kit, I highly recommend that you practice using it, even if you're not fully set off, even if you're not having like a full-blown like panic moment or intrusive thoughts moment or anything like that. I definitely recommend you still practice, because in the moment, again, those symptoms can be really intense. And so the more that you practice and the more that you smell the peppermint and know for a fact that you're safe, it's just going to make this way more effective, and it's really going to help you in the long term. It's also going to make it second nature for you, so that you won't even have to like use your rational brain to grab the grounding kit and use it. It'll just be so automatic, like muscle memory for you, which is exactly where we want to be. So that is basically how I would mention you go about doing grounding for your 5 senses when it comes to trauma. Now, let's take a look at the more relaxed version, mindfulness. So again, reiterating that when you are grounding for mindfulness, it's not necessarily due to super intense PTSD like trauma. This is more about just centering yourself in the present moment. You can still use a grounding kit. You can absolutely still kind of prepare yourself in that way. I know I like to do that. I do have very specific smells that I know do very important things for me in terms of grounding. So for example, I personally don't like to use lavender because lavender makes me super sleepy. So I am not going to use lavender to ground myself. I am going to use lavender if I want to sleep. I like to use peppermint oil because peppermint oil makes me feel alive. It really just like activates the room for me and just really makes me present in a way that is just unmatched by any other scent that I can smell. I have other scents that I will use if I'm wanting to feel relaxed but not sleepy, or if I'm trying to meditate. And so you can really have a lot of fun with it if you would like, as you get to know yourself more and as you get to just learn how you activate and navigate the world. But let's just start with the basics, right? So if you find yourself in a meeting at work and you are having such a hard time focusing and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can barely even remember what this person is saying in front of me, but this is a huge presentation and I really need to focus. You can absolutely ground yourself by just taking a look at things that already exist in the room. For example, if you're sitting in a chair, you can start to notice the texture of the chair itself. And notice, okay, does this feel hard? Am I sitting on a really soft chair? Is this chair comfortable for me? How does my back feel in this chair? That's automatically going to make you grounded in the moment. You can start to notice the scent. Did someone brew coffee in the workroom so I smell coffee, or anything along those lines? Are you wearing perfume or cologne that you think smells good and you get a whiff of it and you think, oh yeah, like that smells good? And so activating those five senses just keeps you present in the moment. Another thing could be looking at something. I know a really popular suggestion is to find like a certain amount of blue items in the room, or to do even some breathing. Anything along those lines also can really work as well. And to reiterate, the reason why I use this example for a more relaxed mindfulness exercise is because sometimes we don't always know exactly what our trauma triggers are. Oftentimes people are just kind of learning them as they happen. It's not something that, it requires a lot of self-awareness to really be able to identify the triggers that you're noticing, especially as they're related to your trauma. So I would never want you to feel like, oh, I'm dissociating a little bit, and then notice something, notice a specific texture, or seeing someone who looks like an abuser or anything along those lines, because that can send you into a further intense reaction and a further intense trauma symptom. So that's why if you know you have trauma and you know you are experiencing symptoms from that trauma, it's super important for you to plan and establish safety with certain items already that you have. And again, if you aren't really navigating that in your life, then yeah, you have the luxury where you can just kind of be a little more relaxed and casual about the mindfulness work, and you can just use whatever is in the room, and you can just keep yourself present in the moment because there isn't anything really that triggering for you. Maybe you're just bored, or maybe you were sleepy or something along those lines, but it's not necessarily like trauma related. Now you might have the question, I definitely know I had this question when I was kind of first learning about grounding and mindfulness. Why is this something that we need, right? Especially if like, for someone who's like, I haven't really experienced the kind of traumas that you're telling me about. I don't have any flashbacks. I don't even really dissociate that much. I just have a hard time focusing sometimes. Why is this something that we need to practice? Why is this not something that just comes second nature to us? Honestly, the reason for that is because that everything in this world, not everything, most things in this world are designed to numb us out. They're designed for us to really not be super in tune with our emotions, because our emotions and the things in our lives can be really intense. Even if you wouldn't classify them as trauma per se, you can still be having really intense experiences in your life. I mean, when we think about, you know, what are some things that numb us out, think about how popular happy hour is. People have a really stressful day at work and they go straight from work to the bar and they hang out, and then they go home and make dinner and go to bed, and that is it. that is their day. Is there anything wrong with that? No. There's nothing morally wrong with going to happy hour, but it's just an example of a very socially acceptable way that we can just really numb ourselves out and really not pay attention to why was that day so stressful for me? Is it because I have a toxic boss or an abusive work environment? Is it because that I'm not really in a job that is aligning with my true self and who I really am? These are important things to look at, but again, because of the way things are created and developed in our society, it's just so easy to just not even stay present and to not focus on the things that need our attention right now. So that is why we have to practice grounding. That's why it's something we have to be intentional about, because again, the world at large is really not supportive intensely when it comes to staying present and staying focused on what is actually happening below the surface. I mean, we can even go on to say that people taking Advil because they have headaches, or why are you having headaches? Are they because of stress? I mean, you can really just kind of numb yourself out to your experiences in the world. Even when we talk about binge watching TV, again, morally, is there anything wrong with any of these things? Absolutely not. But when we look at it at large and think, okay, how many times am I actually numbing myself out in the day-to-day? How many times am I ignoring what my body is trying to tell me? And that can be something pretty significant for people, especially if we aren't present to how often we are feeling numbed out. It can be a pretty big shocker to realize, oh my gosh, like I'm not really that present with my emotions all the time, and I'm really not being super curious about why I feel certain things or why I'm experiencing certain things. And so that's where grounding can really come in and be a huge help and a super big support for us. Wow, this looks this looks a little wonky, but you know what? We are here for it, and we're just gonna work with it because we just are. I hope I have enough soil for all of this. I was not expecting to pot this in 2 separate pots. I thought I was gonna be able to get this all in one, but then I started looking at it and I was like, I think I need more than one. For sure. Number 1 is all done with all of the cuttings. Now we're moving on to number 2. So I hope that's another lesson for you to not only is just like grounding, maybe this was something of interest for you, that's why you clicked on the video, or maybe you're just simply a little curious. I hope that you will take the time, take a look around your life and figure out how often are you able to stay present with your true self? How often are you able to really be curious with why you're feeling certain things, or why you have certain sensations or emotions and things like that? Because the more present we are to our experiences, the more we are able to navigate them in a really healthy way, and the more we're able to really prevent things like panic attacks or even other physical things like heart disease and other physical things that are definitely linked to stress and mental health and things like that. It can also help prevent burnout. It can help prevent large emotional outbursts if that's something that you find yourself struggling with, just like randomly getting upset, and especially at people that you love and people that you don't want to hurt or anything like that. Practicing mindfulness and practicing these grounding techniques can really help, again, just like keep you centered, keep you aligned with your life, and allow you to really figure out what's going on. Yeah, so I hope this was beneficial for you. If you liked this video, please thumbs up it. That would be amazing. I would love that kind of feedback. If you have a comment or something to say about anything that was discussed, please leave a comment down below. I would love to chat with you about it, whether you found this super helpful or whether you have another way that you've grounded yourself that's really beneficial and you think other people could benefit from too. Drop it down there and let me know. This is definitely just like a part of grounding. This is not something that's just like exhaustive or anything that includes all of the ways you can possibly ground yourself. Focusing on activating your 5 senses is one of the more beneficial ways, in my opinion, that people can really practice the art of grounding. Here we go, cute little golden pothos. This will eventually trail out and just be a cute little thing. Another thing too is plants, animals, those things activate your five senses all the time. Pets can smell great, they can smell bad. Plants can feel great. As you notice, I don't really wear gloves because I really enjoy the sensation of the soil. I always wash my hands and all that stuff, so don't worry about that hygiene kind of stuff. But yeah, I definitely like the sensations, and it really grounds me and helps me stay focused. Thank you so much for joining me today. I loved chatting with you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you later.